Right, that's 1 minute past the hour. So welcome everyone to our presentation on XDR. Today, I'm your presenter. I'm James Preston. I'm our principal security consultant. This presentation, would you believe it was actually made a couple of months ago? So if you look closely at some of the timestamps and some of the screenshots a little bit later on, you'll see exactly when we made it. However, still very relevant for our time now. So first, I see some familiar names in the chat there, and I see some unfamiliar names as well. So some new names to us. So for those of you who are not already aware, we're AN Security. We are a vendor-agnostic cybersecurity consultancy. We work through a 5-step process to identify your requirements and take you through the successful implementation of cybersecurity solutions. And we're not just here about point products. We're here to deliver on people, processes, and technologies that effectively detect, prevent, alert, and respond to cybersecurity incidents of all sizes. Our agenda for today. So we're going to go through what is XDR first, a brief overview of XDR as a solution area first, and then a quick slide on what does the world look like without XDR. And then what does the world look like with the inverse? So what does the world look like with an effective XDR? There are a lot of platforms out there selling themselves as XDR solutions, and we want to make sure that you have an effective one. We then go on to our demonstration. So I've got a couple of screenshots lined up for us, which then take you through an overview as to what an effective XDR solution will look like in its ability to detect and respond to cybersecurity incidents. I'll then take you through an overview as to what our offer looks like to you. So if you are looking to implement an XDR solution, if you enjoy the content of the slides and you go, you know what, James, that looks like something we need, we can then work through what that solution might look like to you. And then, of course, onto the all-important Q&A. When it comes to the Q&A, there is a Q&A section inside Microsoft Teams. Please feel free to use that. It just makes it a little bit easier to track the questions instead of using the chat instead there. I'll come around to those questions at the end of the presentation. Do type them into the Q&A at any point during the presentation, though. So first, what is XDR? So AN Security going to put together a definition of XDR, where XDR stands for Extended Detection and Response. Now, our idea for an XDR solution is it contains at least a minimum of 4 main domains of cybersecurity. That starts out with our endpoints. So that's our end user devices, that's our servers, that's our machines which people interact with either directly or indirectly. Then, of course, rolls into the identity services. So these are the users' identities, these are the people's identities, but also considering elements like our service accounts as well. I see sometimes people go and refer to the humans as carbon-based identities and the machines as silicon-based identities for it all, of course, there. We then roll into our cloud and service security as well. So a lot of organizations have gone and pushed services into cloud platforms. And of course, we keep seeing the alerts, the notices that come out of the various services about the various news circuits and the likes for it as to when these platforms get breached and how very ineffective their security might be for it. So an XDR solution needs to go and consider those cloud services that you go and publish out. And then, of course, finally, into our network security services as well. So we consider these to be the 4 main domains of cybersecurity. And what we quite often see is organizations have those wrapped up already in either what we might call centralized log management or CLM, or a security insight and event management or SIEM service. The notion there being is that they're going to capture all the logs, capture all the events in those 4 main domains, store them somewhere, to store them for an appropriate period of time, perhaps a minimum of 90 days all the way up to multiple years in some situations, and use that data in the event of a cybersecurity incident. XDR takes that, though, to the next level by introducing a 2-way transfer of data between those 4 main domains of cybersecurity and the XDR platform itself. Now, that XDR platform will include enrichment of that data, stitching that data together across those 4 main domains and including other domains as well, whilst also providing timely and actionable notifications to you as the cybersecurity responders on what's actually going on inside your environments, what's actually going on that the threat actors are perhaps trying to exploit. So at a minimum, we consider our XDR solution to be the fusion of those 4 main domains of cybersecurity. And you might see names similar to UEBA, or User and Entity Behavior Analytics, NDR for Network Detection and Response, EDR for Endpoint Detection and Response, and CPS for Cloud Posture Security. An effective XDR platform is going to stitch together those four main domains of cybersecurity and bring them into a single platform for you. But it doesn't stop there. An effective XDR platform will also have the ability to go and chew together data from a variety of other systems. And that might be your email security services. That might be your vulnerability detection and prevention services. That might be honeypots or deception services that you've deployed, all the way out to attack surface protection, threat intelligence platforms that you might have been invested in, and code and API security platforms as well. It really is about stitching together the data from not just those four domains, but other areas of cybersecurity as well. So why now? Why are we now bringing you an XDR solution? Why are we now saying this is something that's worth looking at, something that's worth investing your time in and coming to these presentations? Well, we've seen over the last couple of years, in particular, a nice jump there between perhaps 2020 and 2022, an XDR solution going from a maturing platform to now a mature security solution. There was that big leap around 2021 when a lot of the vendors decided that they were going to go and stitch together their XDR services with machine learning, a truly powerful and actually useful element of the artificial intelligence craze that we're seeing going on at the moment. And we're now seeing those XDR solutions to be proven to be effective. It's not just a matter of they're kicking out white papers, they're kicking out notices, they're kicking out marketing material to say that they've got the best platform available. It's now that when we go and do our own evaluations as AN Security, that we see these platforms as being effective, as having the capability to detect, prevent, alert, and importantly, respond to cybersecurity incidents. Now, importantly, from this slide that I've got here from the left-hand side, this was taken from the MITRE ATT&CK evaluations, dated 2024. The 2025 one is currently ongoing. You'll see vendors will drop in and out of this every now and again. So a couple of the vendors dropped out there in 2024. But out of those top three, we already work with two of those top three. So the world without XDR, the world without an XDR solution, perhaps the one that you're familiar with already. First, we might have our anti-malware service providing some form of an anti-malware dashboard, such as the first screenshot that we have here, presenting data in one form. We might then have another cybersecurity solution that's going and detecting abnormal logins or failed login attempts for our critical and important service accounts or administrator accounts. And perhaps those are being pushed to you instead of in a dashboard through a Microsoft Teams message, another format used. And perhaps then you might have your network firewalls going and kicking out detailed log messages, another event every time that it sees malicious activity, perhaps rolling into hundreds and thousands of email alerts coming out of those different platforms whenever a determined threat actor is inside one of your environments there. Or perhaps you have a service which is kicking out a stream of log messages every time it sees someone plug in a potentially malicious hardware device, just as I have here on the left-hand side there. A single cybersecurity incident, but one which generated multiple notifications, something which gone and generated that email overload that you might be seeing into your mailboxes already. And then perhaps we have another cybersecurity vendor going and producing a timeline of events, going and presenting its data in not just another format there. So in summary, the world without XDR is one where every cybersecurity vendor goes and publishes their data to you in their own format, without consistency, without the use of common terminology, without the use of a consistent manner, allowing then a delayed response to a cybersecurity incident. The world with XDR, would you believe it? It's this wonderful rosy single pane of glass which gives you a vendor agnostic view of all your cybersecurity alerts and incidents in one single place. So here, our example on the right-hand side has combined together alerts from behavioral indicators of compromise, from indicators of compromise from the network stack, from indicators of compromise from our endpoint agents installed on our machines, and given us one single consistent manner for that individual alert, that individual incident which has come out there for us. That single look and feel, making it easier for you to then respond to those cybersecurity incidents in an appropriate manner. Now, it normalizes data across those different platforms as well. So instead of one vendor describing an IP address in one format, another vendor providing an IP address in another format, or perhaps providing different names for different malware strains in different formats, an XDR solution will stitch those together, normalize it for you, and present it in that single consistent manner. Now, as I said before, an effective XDR solution is going to go and stitch together the data from at least those four main domains of cybersecurity. We've got a couple of those examples here. And then finally, also provide you with an effective case management system. I see a lot of organizations, they go and take their cybersecurity products, they go and feed them into a case management system, which was not designed for cybersecurity, which then allows, again, a delayed response or perhaps 1,000 alerts going into a single incident without any context, without any benefit being provided, lots of duplication, lots of excessive duplication going on inside those systems. An XDR system will give you that single place for case management for cybersecurity incidents. Now, equally so, an XDR solution will go and have integrations with the other systems that you might be using already. A lot of times that's some form of messaging system, that's some form of a chat or email notification going out. And we'll talk to this in a little bit more detail a little bit later in the presentation. An XDR solution will also have integrations into your existing ticketing systems, perhaps, or perhaps a virus reputation system that you might be using, or an IP reputation system that you might be using, and equally so into vulnerability management systems. These XDR platforms are all about that two-way transfer of data, not just absorbing information from a single system, but also being able to poke it back into that system to deliver effective responses. So if we were to consolidate down all that we've learned here so far, what makes an effective XDR platform? Well, first, it's got to work with what you have already. If you've already invested significant time in email security, in endpoint security, in vulnerability management, in network security, an effective XDR platform isn't going to require you to go and rip that out and replace it with something different. It's going to integrate, it's going to work with what you have already. So you continue to leverage the benefits of what you've invested in. Importantly, it's going to have extensive automation capability. So we keep seeing organizations having a delayed response to cybersecurity incidents. You can look at the front page of the BBC News website any time of the day and you'll see cybersecurity incidents ongoing. And quite often that's because organizations continue to depend on human response to cybersecurity incidents, when in reality, we need to be automating that, taking that away from the people and giving those abilities to go and respond to those cybersecurity incidents over to the machines. Next is going to be generating timely notifications. Those notifications might come across multiple channels or a singular channel, whatever it is, it needs to be timely. I've got a great slide on that a little bit later in the presentation. Next, it must use strong authentication practices. Again, something I'll cover a little bit later on, but we consistently see some of the more entry-level vendors in this space, allowing IT administrators, allowing security administrators, allowing network administrators to log into the XDR platform, the platform which effectively controls the cybersecurity across all the domains of security that you have with simple SMS two-factor, something that we know to be compromised, something that we know to be a weak form of authentication. An effective XDR platform doesn't need to become your next biggest liability when it comes to cybersecurity. It should have that capability to have strong authentication built into it. And of course, the R in XDR stands for response. And a lot of organizations might think that the most effective response is to go and isolate a machine, isolate a user account, and cut the threat actor off, when in reality, that might not always be the right thing to do, especially if we have a low severity cybersecurity incident and it's running on the CEO's machine. Perhaps we've got an implemented effective zero trust security, and every time we see a cybersecurity incident, if we simply go and isolate our machines from the internet, all we're doing is disrupting our productivity, disrupting our organization's ability to do what's actually making it its core goal and function, as it were. So let's roll into some demonstrations. Now, out of respect for your time, I've got to focus on these demonstrations for the endpoint and network side of an XDR solution. If you'd like to dive into the other elements of an XDR solution, by all means, get in touch with the AN Security Account Manager and we can provide some more bespoke demonstrations for you there. Now, whenever it comes to demonstrating an XDR platform, what you'll quite often find is that we put it into an alert-only mode. The goal of that is to show you the full breadth of capabilities of that platform. Certainly in the demonstrations that I've got here, the very first thing that we would have done would have gone and been prevented by the XDR platform, and it would not have been able to progress. The cyber attack, the cyber incident that I'm going to demonstrate, it wouldn't really have very much to show off for the platform in the first place there. So I've put everything into alert only mode. Now, when it comes to the timely email notifications, some of you might be familiar with RFC 1149, IP over avian carriers. And you might be thinking, James, get serious here. Our emails are delivered instantaneously. Our Teams messages come through instantaneously. But in reality, as part of our threat emulation service, which is where we come to site, where we come and visit your organization, we do malicious activities on your behalf to see how effective your existing cybersecurity platforms are. We keep bumping into vendors that have an up to 10-minute delay in an incident being generated, an alert being raised, to it actually being delivered to the IT security teams. And in reality, sometimes we've seen even longer than that, even longer than 10 minutes for that incident to actually make it to a human eyes, for someone to actually go and respond to it. In some of the worst possible cases that we've seen, it's taken up to 24 hours for incident responders to actually go and respond to a cybersecurity incident just because they haven't received timely notifications. Now, different forms of messaging system, of course, that we can use there. I quite like instant messaging systems. So a chat channel, something inside Teams or Slack or whatever instant messaging service you might be using. There, it's quite easy to go and guarantee how quickly that message is being delivered because it's going direct to an API endpoint. Whereas when it comes to email services, of course, that email notification about something malicious going on inside your environment, it's got to hop its way through multiple mail relays. It's got to hop its way through mail filtering systems. It might even be dropped by the mail filtering system because it contains messaging that might be malicious in nature, of course, because it's alerting you to a cybersecurity incident. And this is why I really like to see instant messaging services being used to actually deliver that initial notification. So let's have a look at our demonstrations. In our first demonstration, our threat actor has decided that they're going to go to a GitHub repo here and start to download web shells onto the machine which they've gone and gained remote access into. So a web shell is a mechanism of injecting some malicious code into a website, which then allows you to effectively go and control that web server at the same permission level, typically of the web application running on it. That might be the Apache process or the IIS process, for instance. In some cases, of course, we see that administrators have gone and accidentally misconfigured those web services, and they might even be running as an administrator. So certainly this is a malicious act that we have here. So they've gone to the GitHub website there. They've gone and downloaded that as a zip file, and that's gone and raised our first case inside our XDR platform here. And it's been raised as a medium level case. We can see on the left-hand side there of our screenshot that a web shell is being downloaded. And on the right-hand side, we can see the machine, the asset, which has been impacted by this download of the web shell. And equally so, when we go and click into that case, we can see under investigation data, some additional details in the center pane there, showing where that malicious code was downloaded from. All too often, we see that cybersecurity teams don't have enough information available to them to actually know where their threats are coming from, to actually know what the threat actors are up to. An effective XDR platform here at the network level has gone and detected that malicious download of those malicious web shells onto that machine and has told you where they've come from as well. And equally so, inside the case management system here, we have the ability to go and assign that case a name, go and raise its severity, assign it to our cybersecurity incident responders, and change its status throughout. So the full capability there to actually go and manage this incident that we have. So next up, the threat actor has decided that they're going to unzip that zip file. That then goes and gets flagged as malware by the agent that's installed on our machine. So not only here do we have the network detecting the malicious activity, but we now have the endpoint agent that's installed on the machine as well. So now our screenshot of the XDR case management system has been updated. On the left-hand side there under sources, we see that not just the next generation firewall, but also the endpoint agent has now gone and detected that malicious behavior. We can see that our artifacts have been updated. So now the explorer.exe process is also involved in this incident. And we can see that the assets on the right-hand side have also been updated. And we can see that the IT administrator account has been involved in that incident as well. Full visibility throughout our attack lifecycle here. In our next screenshot, then, we can then click into our issues and insights and get a little bit more detail as to what's actually going on inside that machine there. We can see that the anti-web shell protection module of our XDR endpoint agent has triggered here, detecting that as malware in nature. So let's go and do some form of a response. Let's go and isolate that machine. Here we've got that list of assets. We know which computers were involved in this incident. And so very quickly we can click into the security operations option there and isolate that endpoint, cut its network access off. And these are one of the activities that you might go and automate. You might say that during working hours, we're going to give a 10-minute grace. And if an IT administrator hasn't responded to this incident within 10 minutes, that we're going to go and automatically isolate the machine. But then out of hours, whenever IT staff aren't in, or whenever you don't have a security operations center covering your IT capabilities, as it were, that response is going to be instantaneous and automated. And again, here we can see that the XDR agent has now cut off network access for that machine, but continue to allow data to flow into the relevant security and remote control systems. That way, when you get back in the morning, you can still have management control over that machine. You can start to investigate the incident further. So let's have our second cybersecurity incident, our second scenario now. And here we've used a particular tool which goes and simulates a ransomware attack on the machine. So let's envision we get in the morning, we've had everything on alert only mode, and we see this sea of red. We see that 36 issues have been raised, 36 alerts have been generated there inside the XDR platform across a variety of different sources. So not just the endpoint agent, but also indicators of compromise have been seen being connected out to. So individual IP addresses that we know to perhaps be malicious in nature there. Again, we would, in an ideal world, have automated the handling of this case so that the moment we saw something potentially malicious, that machine would have been isolated and the threat actor cut off from that computer entirely, preventing them from spreading, preventing them from furthering their attack and achieving their objectives. Now, the top bar that we have here, the lettering and the numbers that we have in red there, you'll see that it's mapped against the very popular MITRE attack matrix. So wherever possible, we as AN Security like to use common industry terminology to go and describe cybersecurity services and incidents. And if you're not already familiar with MITRE attack, it's an absolutely brilliant knowledge base of the real world tactics, techniques, and procedures that threat actors have been seen getting up to whenever they carry out their attacks. Well worth investigating, well worth reading into, and well worth learning from the knowledge that it can share with you. So let's flip back to our incident here. We can see that the threat actor has attempted to perform execution, defense evasion, they've attempted to gain access to credentials, and they've established some form of command and control inside our machines there. That's all mapped against the MITRE attack matrix there along the top. So let's continue on and start investigating our incident, actually see what's been going on. So if we click into the artifacts pane here, we can see a series of known legitimate services, so the ping, the Windows terminal, PowerShell and the likes, have been used. And these are digitally signed by Microsoft, right? So we trust the ping utility, we trust Windows terminal, we trust PowerShell, as it were, because they've been signed by Microsoft. But here they've been used in a malicious manner. And we call this living off the land. So we consistently see threat actors being expunged from networks, being expunged from machines, because whenever they bring malware along with them, it's very easy to go and detect. It's very easy to say that's something new, prevent it from running. However, when our threat actors go and use legitimate tools in malicious manners, it's much harder for us to detect. And again, this is a core part of an XDR platform, the ability to analyze the user's behaviors, begin to analyze what's actually going on that machine, and start to identify those malicious activities based on behavior instead. Now, here we can see an additional agent, which is perhaps unfamiliar to you, the Validato Validator Executor here. So perhaps that's worth some further investigation. Perhaps that's worth some further reading into. So we can then start to go into these kind of tree views that we'll find inside our XDR agents. On the far right-hand side, we can see those malicious triggers being kicked off there. We can see Mimikatz being used. We can see a dumper utility being used, which is there to go and dump credentials from machines. All this brilliant insight that we go and get out of our XDR platforms. And of course, we can trace it back to the original source. So there, if we zoom in ever so slightly, we can see that the validator agent here, the validator executor here, is the source of all this malicious activity, is the source of everything that's been going on inside our machines. And if we click into that, we can see that the last utility, the last executable, which wrote to disk for that installer for that particular agent was the ISL Lite client. Now, this is a remote access tool, which actually we use as AN security whenever we're working with our customers remotely. Absolutely brilliant, allows us a lot of control and flexibility over the systems that we're interacting with. But here, of course, it's been used in a malicious manner. So if we click into that ISL Lite client, if we click into the link there, we can then read into it further and see where it's come from. Again, we have so much visibility as part of these platforms. We can see all that extra data. And here under our domains view, we can see that that was downloaded from support.ansecurity.com. So we know the source of our original infection here. We know the source of what's actually going on that's malicious inside our environments. True visibility, to true power, to true ability to go and control what's happening on our machines. So in our third and final demonstration that we have here, we have an indicator of compromise lookup. So what you might see is the cybersecurity vendors. I've got examples here from Palo Alto Networks, Sophos. You'll see all of the vendors kicking out some kind of threat feed, some kind of indicator of compromise feed that we can then go and import into our XDR solution. So here, whenever one of those vendors goes and detects a really popular campaign, perhaps a SharePoint exploit that we had a couple of weeks or perhaps even months ago, it must have been now, the vendors will go and say, if you see your services connecting out to these IP addresses, connecting out to these domains, assume that system is compromised because we've seen that behavior being linked to the threat actors. And they'll go and publish lists that look like this. So there, for instance, we can see the SHA-256 file hashes, we can see the IP addresses, we can see the URLs and the domains that threat actors have been seen connecting out to. And we can go and import those lists into our XDR solution and go and say, review the logs, have a look at what we've seen over the last 30, 90, 200, 300, 700 days. Tell me if you saw any activity out to those IP addresses, out to those domains, out to those files that were previously not known to be malicious, but that are now known to be malicious. And we can then say, okay, well, our platform here has seen connectivity out to this malicious domain. It's been raised now as a medium severity cybersecurity incident. We can then go and read further into that and perhaps leverage one of the integrations into the VirusTotal platform and say, well, what do other cybersecurity vendors say about that domain? And here we can see that 5 of the other vendors are now flagging this as malicious. 2 of them are flagging it as suspicious, and perhaps the others are just not aware of it yet. Well, let's say, okay, what machines have actually been connecting out to this? Which user account might have been compromised? Which applications were involved in this incident? Let's go and review the logs that we have inside our XDR platform there. And here we can see that we've got a Windows machine currently connected to the solution. So we do have effective remote control over that platform. We can see that it was the Microsoft Edge browser that connected out to that known malicious IP address, and that the username at the time that was connecting out to that service was indeed the administrator of that machine. From there, we can kick off the incident response process. Perhaps that incident response process is to isolate that machine, rotate the account of that administrator's password and the likes. So a final bonus round demonstration for you, of course, is that SharePoint vulnerability. It was affecting the on-premise version of Microsoft SharePoint, particularly impacted a lot of organizations out in the United States, which were still running on-premise SharePoint services. And what we saw there is the XDR vendors, an example here, very quickly moving on this to go and deliver behavioral threat protections, go and deliver indicators of compromise into their solutions that again could go and review the indicators of compromise, go and review the logs that were built into the platform to go and say, were you actually targeted? Were you actually impacted by this cybersecurity incident? This is one of those key elements of these XDR platforms, tying together the data from those 4 main domains of cybersecurity. Not everything is going to be detectable on the network. Not everything is going to be detectable on the endpoint. But when we stitch that data together, we can deliver really effective cybersecurity that gives you full visibility into what's going on inside your environments. So that leads us quite nicely onto our offers to you. So if you've had a good look through this presentation, if you've enjoyed the content so far for it, we have 3 different offerings for you. Option number 1 is an XDR platform, which is tailored again to your needs and requirements. We're not here to go and do rip and replace. We want to find something which integrates with what you have already. And we bring along your own cybersecurity team. We deliver the training and the upskilling that's necessary to run that platform effectively, whilst also introducing the automations necessary so that when your cybersecurity team isn't available, that the XDR platform is still effective. It still has the capability to respond to the cybersecurity incidents. Certainly, whenever it comes to evaluating those platforms, make sure it has automated response capabilities. I keep seeing some of the lower, more entry-level vendors where they say, oh, yes, we can respond, but we have no automation engine behind it. So whenever that cybersecurity threat actor goes and targets your organization at 12 o'clock at night and no one is about for it, we can have all the detection capability in the world, but if we can't respond to that incident by cutting the threat actor off, what's the point in having the platform in the first place? Now, option number 2, for those organizations that do want a true 24/7 service, human eyes on, people actually watching the alerts, people having the ability to go and respond and investigate in a timely manner, we have option number 2, where a third-party security team will be paired with that XDR platform. Again, that will be appropriate to your needs and requirements for it. We have seen a couple of organizations recently take on a service where 9 to 5, their internal security team handles the first and second lines of the XDR platform, but then out of hours, and indeed for any third line support necessary, that a third party security team handles that for you instead. Now, our final platform, our final offering to you is what we call a threat emulation. And you might be saying, you know what, James, everything that I've seen so far, we're already doing that. We've got an effective XDR platform. Well, the threat emulation is there to help you prove it. The threat emulation is where we come to site, where we work with you to investigate the services that you have already and bring along the tool sets that we have, bring along the same tactics, techniques, and procedures that threat actors are engaging in, and deliver those to your machines, deliver those to your accounts, deliver those to a subset of machines that we have very tightly controlled over. And we can see how effective that platform is. The end result from that is a report to you to say, here are the things that went great, here are the areas for improvement, and here is our summary for your executives, for your boards to actually understand what the current state of cybersecurity is inside your organization. Now, to deliver on those first 2 options, we need a bit of information. First, of course, we need to understand what data sources you're going to bring along. Starting out with those 4 main domains of cybersecurity: your devices, your endpoints, your identity services, your cloud and security services, and your network services to start out with. If you want to discuss the broader elements of your cybersecurity program with us, even better. It allows us to find a platform which integrates effectively with what you have already. And then equally so, what data you would like the platform to provide itself. Some of these platforms have a really cool vulnerability management program built into them already. You might say, well, James, we don't have a vulnerability management program. What data, what solutions can the XDR platform bring along to deliver vulnerability management to us? Next up is data retention. Now, I would suggest that organizations, at a minimum, when it comes to centralized log management across those 4 main domains, have at least 90 days worth of logs stored at all times. Now, equally so, you might be in a regulated organization where perhaps you have a year or perhaps even as long as 7-year requirement to go and store data. A key element of the XDR platform there. Now, the number of devices, number of endpoints and users that you have is a good indicator for us to select the right platforms. Some of these platforms, quite frankly, they start at about 250 devices, but we also have other offerings where they might have as little as the tens or maybe even just 100 devices. And that's the level where they actually start, a very important metric to go and communicate across. Now, equally so, where are those devices and users? If everyone is working from home, that gives us a couple of different options for it. And if a lot of those users are still working inside the office, again, that gives us some different options for us to work towards. And then finally, of course, who is going to run the day-to-day management of the platform? If it's going to be your internal cybersecurity team, then we need to seriously consider the training and upskilling necessary to leverage this platform to its very best. If it's going to be a third-party service, then we need to impart into you the right knowledge that you can continue to challenge that service, make sure that they are indeed staying on top of everything. But of course, we need to select the right service for your needs and levels there. So a final word from me. I mentioned it earlier there. An XDR platform, of course, we've gone and combined together data from those 4 main domains, and we've gone and combined together the ability to remotely control those 4 main domains of cybersecurity, which can make the XDR platform itself a juicy target for threat actors. Now, to combat that, we need to introduce not just multi-factor authentication, but strong authentication. Those of you who know me well will know that I've been banging on about this for years, perhaps even coming up to a decade now. Now, Evil Engine X, or Evil Engine X, is a platform which allows threat actors to very accurately simulate the Microsoft 365 login page, as we can see in a demonstration here provided back in 2024 when AN Security had a wave of targeting of these. Now, we effectively responded to these by having already implemented strong authentication. But the Evil Engine X platform here will go and steal the session ID of that multi-factor authentication service that you go and click through there. Once the threat actor has that session ID, it allows them to very quickly impersonate high-level privileged IT administrators and go and gain access to the XDR platform itself. The only solution to this is what we call strong or phishing resistant multi-factor authentication, or simply strong authentication. Now, this comes in a variety of different formats. Typically, when it comes to iOS devices, that's going to be something like Face ID or Touch ID. When it comes to Windows devices, that might be Windows Hello for Business. And equally so, as a kind of a platform agnostic option, you have hardware security keys like the security key by Yubico. So if your XDR platform doesn't support phishing resistant multi-factor authentication, and equally so allows the enforcement of that being the only method of logging into that platform, please just walk away then and there. What we don't want to do is go and make that XDR platform the prime place for a threat actor to go to and go and press that isolate button across all your machines. The way to prevent that is by introducing strong authentication from day one. So thank you all for your time. We're going to roll into the question and answers there. I'll be sticking around for the next 10 minutes as well, just in case anyone's got some specific questions and answers there. So our first question we've got, there are a limited number of XDR solution companies. The bad actors will know this. So what are the most common ways attackers have successfully evaded XDR in the field? Now, an effective XDR platform is going to be feeding the data in from multiple different domains of cybersecurity. Now, what we'll quite often see is the threat actors might have something new and novel, perhaps in the endpoint space, but detecting them at the network level is still trivial to do, or detecting them at the behavioral level is still trivial to do. And this is a key part of an XDR solution, stitching the data from across those multiple domains, that if we see a threat actor do something new and novel in one domain, that we still have the other 3 to go and fall back onto, the 3 that we can still go and say we have effective detections in this space. And what I would say there is go and review the MITRE attack matrix, go and review the MITRE attack navigator and say, well, what coverage do we have in all of these spaces? What coverage do we have in threat actors delivering remote access tools to our machines? And there we could say we've got one detection level at the network, right? We can see people using TeamViewer or AnyDesk or RustDesk, but we've also got detection and response capabilities at the endpoint level. So we can see if someone has dropped the TeamViewer executable onto our machines and is attempting to run it. And that's 2 levels of protection already. We could take that to the next level and also say to our behavioral threat detections, if you see a user run an administration application that they've never run before, go and flaze an alert, go and raise something new. And that way, if that threat actor has one way of bypassing perhaps 1 or maybe even 2 of those capabilities for detection, we still have others to fall back to. I hope that answers your question. If you've got any other more clarification for it, please feel free to drop that in the chat as well. How best would this work in Oxford for our limited access to our Office 365 tenancy and Sophos backends? So obviously we've got non-University of Oxford customers here as well, but to address those ones specifically for it, Office 365, unfortunately, that's a matter of speak with the university directly and work with them to find a solution for it. I hate to say it, but that's probably not going to happen. For 99.9% of the customers that we work with, they have full administrative control over their Microsoft 365 instances, and plugging those into an XDR solution is a couple of clicks with administrator access being granted. When it comes to Sophos, within the University of Oxford, the university does actually provide you to the logging systems that come out of Sophos and allows you then through the API services to feed that data into the XDR platform. So there we can continue to receive the data from the Sophos endpoint agent. Hope that answers your question as well. Again, if you've got any further follow-ups, just drop them into the chat. That's all that I see in the Q&A at the moment. I'll be around until about 10 to, but otherwise, thank you all for your time. Obviously, our sales team will be reaching out to you following this call, but if you do have any immediate questions, get in touch with your AN Security account manager. Thank you all.